Welcome to a little improvised.
Cuban style.
As I said to Alice, I don't know what. I said, "Hey, don't say that, don't say that. Behave professionals. But we fix. Really, it's going to start the session.
What is this session about?
No, you have the mind medicine. Come on, Billy. You've been to Cuba.
It's actually a reality.
Well, so this is a reality show, I don't know.
That's right.
So are we talking about photography or Cuba in general, or
If you want to talk about, if you want to talk about
Cuban
bacalao,
photography
you can.
compared to the West.
Cuban
I
photography?
know what to talk about, but you can start to.
Well,
there.
I have no
Can
idea.
you present us, all of us?
It's Morten. If you don't know, this is Morten. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard about or seen him before. Alex, one of the great photographers, is actually one of my favorites. He's inspired me a lot.
I'm not a favorite.
You're not Cuban. And we have Nelson, who's the director of Fototeca in Cuba, where we've been lucky to have had a workshop in January. And
Did you take wonderful photographs, Billy?
Who?
He took a couple very nice photos.
Well, I got some.
If he'd worked a little harder, he could have taken
yeah,
a few more. But
I got the rooster.
And the goat.
And then we got Rebecca, Alex's wife. They are now working on their second project together. They made a book on Cuba together, which is a beautiful book. And the pictures up in the Folkets Hus.
And they're going to have presentation 6 o'clock.
Yes, they will present some of the work after.
And it will be more organized.
Well, you won't have this professional introduction, I suppose.
That's true.
You will be presented by this man. and then we have Pedro. He's a fantastic photographer who's won prizes and a fantastic guy and a fantastic photographer. And I've been so lucky to meet with these people in Cuba, and I'm very happy to see them here. And I haven't known them for very long, but I already feel that we are really close friends. We hug each other every time we meet.
In the bar?
In the bar. Well, oh yes, in the bar, especially in the bar. And they gave me even a big, that was, where is, Raul, is that he gave me a cigar this long, so I ended up quite green. I had to smoke the whole cigar.
Okay,
to,
this is serious stuff.
So
you start with the first question.
Question? Oh, I just introduce.
You start with, I can go on, but you start. I'm very curious to hear the first question.
Well, so am I. Well, since we should compare Western and Cuban photography.
Well, maybe not Western. That's perhaps not the right.
No, well. Well, I think maybe since you took the word, I think maybe you can.
I take over. I have no time for this. Come on. Okay. Why do you think that the Cuban photographers has impressed us so much? I mean, and most of the work is in black and white, and Cuba is the most colorful place in the world. Could you say something? Why do you think the standard of the photographers is that high?
If you were at the presentation of Raul or mine or even Nelson, the rest of the people from Cuba, you all the time hear that we have a lack of material, a currency of that. And I think and I strongly believe that this currency make us strong because we have to take what we have it. So we have to be very focused on it. And I think maybe this is what made so, why, as you say, nicely, very impressive
All of
for
them.
us. Yes.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I also think that the fact that I mean, you don't make a living being a photographer for a long time. You know, you can be for maybe 10, 15 years doing very good stuff without getting any income from it. So in Cuba, when you decide to become a photographer, an artist working in photography, actually you have to be very strong and fight very hard for it. And that's, only the strongest survive. And well, this is it, more or less.
I think that's a very, very strong message, especially to young photographers here, that they mean it's an advantage to not have everything. And I think it's very important that I know that it's when it's about luck, they ask people from all over the world the same question. Bangladesh, the average Bangladeshi is more happy than the Norwegians, and they're more happy in 32 African countries than Norway. Norway is 99, number 99 on the list, and the Norwegian was very lucky in 1962, before Kennedy was shot, before the Cuba, just before that, because we had hopes, some neighbors got television, we had to struggle, but still was looking forward to a future, and it was the worst years was 2011 in Norway. It was the worst year about happiness, and we have everything. And you guys are coming and really hit us, slap us in the face in a wonderful way. What do you think, Alex?
Well, I think that there's something for those of us who live in societies where we have many, many more amenities than Cuba does. There's something refreshing about a sort of a raw immediacy about the Cuban photographer's work, something about their immediate relationship with the society, and they're photographing a society in which there are many of the tensions in a society don't have the veneer over them that many northern societies have. I think that also means that when in the United States and Europe, for example, in the photography world, there's a huge emphasis simply on issues that have simply to do with photography or art. Really very divorced from the world of the streets. And so I think that seeing this Cuban photography makes you, it's so far from, postmodern work, where people, say, well, basically the world of images is just as significant, if not more so, than physical reality. You don't feel that in Cuba at all. You feel physical reality in these people's photographs. So I think that's one reason why a lot of us respond so intensively and directly, because it's refreshing.
I think this is interesting. You don't need to agree with us. But since I just did a portrait of Connie now, and Connie said that to be here was a fresh element, because she's also teaching in the United States and find this contemporary conceptual photography so boring. And she said, this week we have met photographers taking photographs by heart. And I think it's, if you could comment on this, because in Cuba Mela in Bangladesh a couple of months ago, it was a lot of presentations, and one woman from a big museum in Australia presented 14 contemporary photographers from Australia. And I went up stage and said, these 14 people, that is around 25, 30, 35, 40 years, is doing exactly the same as in Norway. Exactly the same as in Switzerland, as in everywhere. And I think, I don't know, that because it was exactly the same that you see all over. Pale people standing upside down in shopping malls, looking like with no lack of energy. They go to the internet and see what other nations is doing and copying it. I think, because it's ridiculous that you're doing the same style of photography in Australia and Norway. It's 30 hours by plane. I don't know, do you think that, could you comment on what you think is that?
Well, that has happened a lot in the history of art. I mean, there is a particular movement in the abstractionism in Argentina that happened in the 60s and 70s. And the thing is that the artists in Argentina were copying the reproductions of the paintings they see from European painters and North American painters. And they see the colors on the prints flat, so they were doing flat paintings, you know. And they create a new trend because the result of the work had nothing to do with the originals. So there's always, in certain latitudes, there are mainly two phenomena that happens a lot. One is that they try to copy what they believe the centers are doing. I mean, the centers like New York or Paris, you know. And on the other side, many times also the people in those places are also trying to turn themselves into the identity that those others from those centers believe they are. I mean, maybe they're not that good savages, but they dress as a savages to become what the other things they should be.
Yeah, because I think I just talk a little and then I leave mostly to you. Because if I had starting asking questions for you, how many actors do you know about outside Norway? I think 90% will pick American actors and 10% English actors. Can't they act in either Russian theater bad? Are the Polish theater or a film bad? Hungarian? Cuban? No, because we could say Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. I mean, we have not the clue of Greece. I mean, the huge Korea, China, the huge film nations. I mean, this quality thing. So we have, and my students in Bangladesh, my students in Nepal, my students in South Africa, they go and look at the internet, and if you are a hit in New York, they are better than you. They search only for New York, London, Paris. That's the key element. And if you're not, well, no, this is they search not for Russian photographers, Norwegians, Cubans. No, it's these three capitals. And then that it will be similar. And then another thing, and then I'll leave it to you, is when people are coming to my workshop and have been to Cuba, they are going into the Cuban trap. It's a red wall, an old Cadillac, a green window, a curtain, a dove or an old lady, all the time. And these guys are working in black and white in the most colorful place in the world. Okay.
I think most of the time the medias can ruin our inner side because this world is completely bombed by a lot of image. And because you see so many images in magazine, internet, poster, this and that, and we think that that's right, this is what I have to do. And it's a manipulation of mine because most of those images for sell something. So you follow that trend without taking care what you have inside. And for instance, us as a Cuban, we study photography pretty hard and deep. We study Alex, Rebecca, Elliot, Erwin, and all of these big guys from the story of the photography. We study, we know pretty well because they are the great, they are good, they have said, they have things to say. But oh, we are too. And I think that in photography, the photography can't escape from the reality, but can transcend it. And then when I study his work, when I study her work, when I study Cartier's own work, or Cartes, or Walker Evan, or whatever, why not? I'm Freelander, all those big guys. I had a sense. I start to understand. I start to talk to each other without meeting each other, because we, as a photographer, speak an international language, but also pass through our head and through our heart. And you said what you have inside. That's why, for instance, I said that all my pictures are self-portrait. So I think what you have to do, what people have to do in photography, this is what I think, you can agree or not, is looking inside yourself because you have to be your own. You have to make a statement like Morten said a few minutes ago that every click is a statement. So if you follow what you see mimetically, you are not saying anything. That's why maybe you can see all of this same thing. It could be signed for one guy. Maybe it's not even the guy. It will be a trust or the company could sign all of this image. This is my belief.
Hi. You know, I'm just been a visitor to Cuba, so I always learn more each time I go. And what comes to mind, I originally was a poet before I was a photographer. And the image that comes to mind for Cuban photography is an image about a bird. I don't know if you saw the show, but the cover of the book is a pigeon, and a man is opening up a wing, and it looks like a regular pigeon, but inside are all these colors. And Alex and I had a copy of the book dummy several years ago in London, and a complete stranger, he saw the bird, this image of the bird. He came across the room at the airport, and he said, I happen to be a veterinarian in the United States, and my specialty is birds. Could you tell me what's going on here? And I said, this man, there's all these pigeon societies all over Cuba. They're very passionate about the pigeons. And this man has bred this pigeon so that from the outside it looks like a regular pigeon, but inside it has these colorful wings. And this vet looked at me and he said, if that man lived in the United States, he would be a millionaire because we don't know how to do that. And it's just that level of passion, just for the love of it. It wasn't for money, it was for the love of doing. And that's what I feel like when I'm in Cuba and I look at the work, and when I continue in the exhibition, I feel so honored to be in a room with all these very talented Cuban photographers. You know, it is that passion I feel, you know, that kind of passion.
Yeah, I think just a quick, in Bangladesh is some of the same, because when I do the workshops in Bangladesh and they work in the afternoon and we work very hard. And they work from 5 o'clock in the evening and the early morning. But when I always go out 5 o'clock to shoot, and then they are in sleeping bags outside my hotel room to show them what they did, and they printed it. Because they cannot wait till the critique that starts 9, because I want them to use the morning light. They cannot wait. Just tell me, we're going to just show, I'm on the right track. And they don't sleep, and they're working so hard because they're really hungry. What do you think, Willy?
Well, I was thinking about something else, actually. I lost a bit. I'm sorry for my introduction. I lost a bit my head.
What were you thinking about?
No,
Don't go there. Don't go there.
No, I'll try to be a bit serious. I'm sorry. No, I was actually thinking about, I've been traveling a bit around on the western part of Cuba, and I also spent quite a lot of time in Havana. And I love the island and this vibrancy, both the people and the colors, animals. And I just wonder, things I have a feeling has already started changing. For instance, Raul had some pictures of these people working, making this charcoal with smoke, and a lot of tradition will, of course, disappear, and maybe in the future, in the fields, you will have machinery and things like that. And, of course, the Cuban photography shows a lot of the life in Cuba, and mainly from all of you in black and white, but it's still very colorful in a different way. What do you think about the future? What will happen? And that will, of course, also influence photography, because Cuba is so different from the rest of the world. There is no other city in the world that is similar to Havana, for instance. And also the country life is unique, and the people. And when this starts changing, it will of course take time. But what do you think will happen to the photographer in future in Cuba?
Well, that's a good question. Till so far, I can already bring you, I don't know how many portfolios from young photographer. You have already 2 youngsters here. They are very powerful. And I think our culture is so strong that the changes that are coming, if they are not good change, we will do the same, because it's powerful. It's a powerful cultural. Well, we have it, and I think the photography will still in good hand. As I say, I can already, if you ask me, I can give you right away 10 names like this from people that are taking picture 2 years ago, and you will see what is going on with those younger. So I think we still. That's my belief, and this is something that I really want to believe, because I want it to be in the way.
One of the things that we also haven't addressed, I think, in all of this, we keep talking about just the black and white work, but I think that what's also interesting, for instance, if you look at Nelson's work, which is conceptual work, but it is dealing with issues that run right to the heart of the society. And that's a significant difference from much of the conceptual work that we see elsewhere in the United States, or probably here in Norway, I don't know. So there's a really different note to all the photography, because there is this just essential, there's these big essential questions that run through the society that are right out there on the surface, in a way that at least in the United States, there's a veneer that sort of covers over them.
Actually, I have a question for you, Alex. You've photographed all through the Caribbean, and you talk about, sort of famously, when you first got your first assignment to go to Cuba in '93, that's when lots of people were going to Cuba, and you almost said, oh, too many people are going. I'm not going to continue to do it. I'm not going to do a book. But then you ended up doing a project. And one of the things you always talk to me about is Cuba compared to the rest of the Caribbean, about how vital the culture is, how big the culture is, in a way, compared to the various other countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not, I think that, yes, the richness and size and strength of the culture in Cuba is very unique. There are other cultures that are extremely strong in the Caribbean too. I mean, Haitian culture is strong in a whole other way, as is Jamaican culture. But one of the things that has always struck me about Cuban culture is that even if people have some ambivalence about some aspect of their government, they are deeply proud to be Cuban. And this is something that I don't find in a lot of the Caribbean. I mean, take an extreme example, Puerto Rico, which, Puerto Ricans that I know seem to exist in this schizophrenia. Things aren't going well in Puerto Rico. It's not a nation itself. They go to Hartford, Connecticut, or Boston, or New York, and they spend time there, and that doesn't work out, and they go back to Puerto Rico. Now, economically, technically, infinitely, Puerto Ricans are much, much better off than Cubans. But psychologically, they seem lost. And there is this kind of sense of psychological strength and belief in themselves that has always impressed me and startled me about Cuba. And what Rebecca said, I went in '93, and I spent a few weeks in Cuba and was really enthralled by it, fascinated by it. But yes, I made a decision at that point, boy, every photographer I know wants to photograph in Cuba. I'm not going to do it. And then, we went back in 2000 and to teach a workshop, and I couldn't resist the streets of Havana, and we eventually ended up doing a book. But, so anyway.
Well, This is kind of funny to talk about your own country, but well, everybody in Cuba talk about it. That when Christopher Columbus came to Cuba, he landed in Cuba. He asked a native if that country, whatever the land, would it be an island or a continent? And the answer of the native was, it is an island, but it's infinite.
Very nice.
And it's, well, yeah, it's a very good phrase. It's a very good answer for the native. One of the first Cuban philosophers.
That's great.
Yeah.
Guys, have you something to add or talk about? Because many of you have responded wonderfully when you've seen the Cuban photography, and I think many of you are very surprised of the quality. Have you something to ask or add? Niels, come on.
Yes, I was very impressed with the photographs from Cuba. Myself, I have decided to photograph in color. If you had the chance, if you had the equipment, you know, whatever you need to photograph in color, would you choose to go in that direction? You know, in the future, near future?
Very good.
I think learning is all about it. So if we can try something new, we can try some new trend, why not? We will add more power at what we are doing because we will have more information, more knowledge. Why not? I think, yes, why not?
I have to say that the technology to produce color photography was already there in the 19th century, a few years after photography was released as a technology. But it was difficult to produce. Even some of the technologies about how to make color at that time, like this camera of 3 colors, they had like 3 different negative, black and white, with 3 filters.
Yeah.
That is a very accurate reproduction of color, actually, still today. And it's the same system, more or less, that, I don't know, Kodachrome film or any other color film uses, because they have all the filters included in the film itself. But still, it was very hard. It was very hard to reproduce. It was very hard to be reproduced with exactly how the photographer wanted to be. So color photography only came to be popular among the professional photographers after the 70s, more or less. I mean, William Eggleston, one of the first photographers to try color seriously, and some others. And in Cuba, that came a little bit later, because right when the revolution started in Cuba and we broke relationship with America, then it was exactly when the color was giving birth in America, you know. So then we got a new friend, the Russians, and they were very far away in color.
Soviet autochrome.
Yeah, exactly. And so most of the Cuban professional photographers, they wanted to work on black and white, you know, and that was like that for a long time. Then when it just started to become easier to get some slides and some color film from this brand Orbo, the German one you mentioned yesterday, then we had a new collapse. The socialist countries, they swapped, they changed, and we suddenly found ourselves alone in the world. And well, we had terrible times. In the early 90s, we had several months of long blackouts, very long blackouts, and a moment of enlightenment, we used to say, you know, because we could have had a blackout for 48 hours, and then we had 6 hours of power, and it was a war situation without any bomb, but it was really like a war situation. We felt at the time like a middle-aged city surrounded by an invisible army, you know. And at that time, we all started making photos, and so the access to the technology of making color photos was very hard. So we get used to work with what we had, and now it's a little bit better. We can, travel a little bit, try to find and buy some materials we need, and some of us are doing color photography. But most important is that we acquire a consciousness that color photography, black and white photography, sepia toning or gold toning or cyanotype, they are all different qualities of the image that can be adding content to the image, So even when you increase the contrast in black and white photography or you reduce the contrast, you are changing the message you are giving up to the audience with the image. So we learned how to work for the different projects we had in mind. And Pedro, who's here, he has a large, vast body of work in black and white. He still continues working on it, but since he has also now the new technology of color available, he's doing beautiful color. But it's a different language. It's a different content he's transmitting with his images.
Because it's the same. I don't know if it's the same, but when I conducted the workshop in Nepal a month ago, they say the same thing as they say in Bangladesh. The same. You Western people think that Bangladesh or Nepal is just poverty, and I say because of you guys. Because you are doing the poverty photographs and send it to the West. And the first 3 days on the workshop in Kathmandu, they went to this fucking garbage thing, and it's a wonderful city. It's so much happening there, beautiful things, and all of them came with wide-angle shots of people, poverty people in the garbage. And I said, come on, guys. Why are you promoting Nepal in such a way? I don't want to see it. And then I forbid them in the workshop to shoot poverty. And suddenly they went home and started to do photographs of their relatives and friends and their houses, and then they realized that we can use photography to tell our story. They think that the West wants poverty, and at the same they're offended that the West is, their Western opinion is poverty, especially in Bangladesh. So all the things they're thinking about to please the West. Yes. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I have a couple of friends, photographers. They did a project. They photographed around 800 bedrooms along the island during 1 year. They simply knock on people's door and ask if it would be possible to go inside the bedrooms to take a picture. They did it using this technique HDR, so the images are very colorful and very rich in textures and very beautiful. And it's mainly about the character of the Cuban, how people are so open, so friendly that they let you go in the bedrooms. And even sometimes when they ask them to leave the bedroom the way they were, they didn't try to fix anything, they just leave it, which is very honest from my point of view and very unique worldwide. But then they photograph all kinds of bedrooms. And then I've seen many times collectors, people interested in photography, Cuban photography, coming to the studio to see the work of these artists. And when they see the bedrooms of the people who have a little bit more money or more refined taste and interior design, they look at that and they say, this is not looking really like Cuba.
That's interesting. Always a good question.
Well, I'll have a question for Pedro and Nelson about the future. I think you asked about the future, and this is a little bit more, how do you see the future for new, young photographers? Will it be able to live from it? Documentary or art, fine art photography? Are you optimistic?
I'm very optimistic about the future, but I believe we all have the duty to be aware that bad things could happen, and middle age is always behind the door waiting. So yeah, but I think that, and I see it a lot in Cuba, that traditional boundaries in between documentary photography and artistic photographies are collapsing, and every day more documentary photographers, they recognize their value, the value of so they consider themselves more and more artists, and are also recognized by the artists working in photography as artists more than photographers, and also at the same time artists who work in conceptual photography or any other forms of photography, they are more and more conscious of the value of their work as a form of document of the time they're living in.
Alex, is it easier to access people in Cuba compared to, let's say, New York City? In streets?
Look, there's no doubt about the fact that working in Cuba as a foreign photographer is quite easy, generally. There's a kind of openness, there's a curiosity, because, I mean, I assume because the society's been so closed to the outside so long, you find yourself invited into people's houses and so forth in a way that you would be unlikely in New York City. On the other hand, I mean, I think photographing on the street in New York City is pretty easy. I mean, it's not a difficult place to work, but it's a different experience than Cuba. There's no doubt about it. But Cuba's not totally unique in this regard. I mean, I think that photographing in Istanbul, which is a society that has been in connection with the rest of the world for far longer than the United States has, that's for sure, is extremely easy too. It's an extremely open society to the same thing. You hang out on a street in Istanbul for a while and all of a sudden you find that you're invited in for tea. So there are societies where there is much, much more openness to the outside than others. But Cuba is unique in this regard, I agree.
Oh, yeah. It was about your question. Yes, I am optimistic. And in the lecture that Adrián did today, he made his point very clear in that sense. And he also said that he wants the best for Cuba, that we want to have a better life that we have, to be in better position, but to keep what we have it already. And I had a curiosity because I can keep hear that when the change that coming and when the change that coming, like we are stopping in the middle of the age or something. And let me tell you something. The only permanent in Cuba is that Cuba is an island. We are continuing in changes. What's the meaning of the revolution is? This is what I think. I would like to say that.
I've thought about this color and black and white. When you look at all other art forms like paintings, graphical work, and even sculpture in Cuba are extremely colorful. And therefore, maybe now when photography will be more accessible for more people, probably these people that would work with do graphical work with all these extreme colors, do you think in the future that will also spread among photographers, that this trend with this very strong colors that is used in Cuban painting, for instance, will be spread to photography?
Probably. Already there are a lot of young photographers that are working in color. As Nelson said, I am a black and white photographer. I'm not that young, but anyway, my last show in Havana was in color, and the name is Havana Color because it's reflecting the changes. So that's why I changed from the black and white to color, because it's reflecting the change in my life and in my country and in my city, because I never go out to take pictures. I only work in Havana because it's the city that I love and I know pretty well. And I like to talk about what I know or what I think I know. But already there are a lot of photographers doing color photography. Adrián was one of them. If you was there at his lecture, you saw it. And he showed another part of the society, it was the most rich or the better condition they have. So it's already spreading. There is what you asked me is already in this moment.
Yeah, however, I have to say that this richness in contradictions in Cuba has always been reflected in many trends that survive at the same time. And always, in every generation, many artists, they scale to the highest position in Cuba, and they belong to completely different trends. And this is something very unique. So it's very rare to find in Cuba like everybody's working in a particular trend. You know, usually there are many different ways surviving at the same time, struggling and doing very good work. So I really hope that we will not become just color and you know, we have many other things to offer. You know.
But it's also strange. I think we're going to end this soon now because we're going to build up everything for the big final with Becky and Alex. Going to be one of the highlights. But actually, I think it's very interesting when I work in Latin America and Africa, and when I give people that maybe has not been photographed before, I mean really into the countryside, I met a lot of people that have never been photographed. And if I give them a Polaroid, because of course they make Polaroid still. People ask me, do you make Polaroid? Of course I do. No problem. The most successful is to give them a black and white Polaroid because they have never seen the world in black and white. So that it's even more. The first trip I went to Africa and gave them color, and I was fine. Then they didn't have color, so I had to bring black and white. And then the response of the black and white Polaroid was amazing. So every time I bring black and white on my trips to give them back after we have photographed, it's black and white is pure magic because they haven't got black and white. I mean, I photographed in Tanzania a woman. She was 99 years old, and when she received the Polaroid, she didn't respond because she had never seen herself. Because it was a big well there out in the country, had no windows with glass. She had never seen herself. And then we photographed her together with the son. And the son said, you remember I was holding around you 2 minutes ago. And because then I hold around you. And she watched the Polaroid for 5 minutes. And then she cried of laughter. Because that was the first time she saw herself. And in black and white. Because everything is so colorful. And it was pure magic. So maybe I think in the world still, in the West and in Cuba, Bangladesh, still black and white will be on. But I asked Steve McCurry yesterday if the first photograph in 1830 was color, and the first film, I mean motion film, was color. If black and white would exist, I don't know. But black and white is very strange in colorful societies.
Are you still trying to promote black and white?
6 o'clock, you're going to see the most amazing color work in the world. Thank you.